Today, we're talking about the Olodo Uprising. Now, while everyone is making memes and turning this into a joke, I think something much more serious and sinister is happening. And I don't think we fully understood it yet. Because here's the question I've been asking myself over the last few days. Who are the Olodos? Is it just people like Pella and Kataife? Or are they in our government too? Are they in our schools, our churches, our businesses? And if we're honest with ourselves, what does this say about the direction Nigeria is heading over the next 10 years? Those are the questions I want us to think about today. But before we do that, let's define what this word actually means. Because a lot of people are arguing without even understanding the conversation. Real quick, if this is your first time here, my name is OJ, and everything on this channel is about becoming a better man, physically, spiritually, and mentally, from a philosophical and Christian point of view. If that resonates with you, please like this video and subscribe. It helps grow our community and tells YouTube to show these videos to more guys like us who are trying to become the best version of ourselves. It also encourages me and the team to keep making these videos. This year we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. I hope you'll be one of them. Now let's get back to the video. Olodo is a Yoruba word. If you grew up in the southwest, you've probably heard it 1,000 times. It simply means someone who's dull, a slow learner, someone who isn't particularly bright academically. It wasn't some deep philosophical concept. It was playground banter. You failed a test, your friends laughed and called you an Olodo. End of story. But then YC came on a podcast and used the word completely differently. He said Nigeria had moved from Yahoo culture to Pella culture. Now, whether you agree with him or not is a different conversation, but I think a lot of people misunderstood what he was trying to say. People heard Olodo and immediately thought he was calling people stupid. I don't think that's what he meant. I think he was talking about values, about what we reward, about who we celebrate, because every generation has the people it chooses to elevate. Those people tell you a lot about what that society values. That's why this conversation traveled so quickly. It wasn't just about one word. It forced people to ask a much bigger question. Who exactly are the Olodos? And I don't think the answer is as obvious as people think. The internet has basically decided that this conversation is about Pella and Kataife. So fine, let's use them. But not because I think they're the problem. I actually think they're the easiest people to point at because they're visible. Take Kataife for example. There was the whole certificate controversy. People started questioning whether it was genuine, and before long, the conversation became another social media spectacle. But that's actually not the interesting part. The interesting part is that for a lot of people, it didn't even matter whether it was true or false. As long as it was entertaining, people stayed. Think about that. Credibility has become optional. Virality is enough. Now, before someone clips this out of context, let me say this very clearly. This isn't hate towards Pella. This isn't hate towards Kataife. If Pella disappeared tomorrow, another Pella would emerge next week. The question is why? Because markets don't create demand. They satisfy demand. If millions of Nigerians didn't enjoy that type of content, nobody would be making it. They're responding to incentives, which means they're not the cause, they're the outcome. They're proof that this market already existed. And that raises another question. If this mentality exists online, does it stop online? Or does it also exist in government? Does it exist in business? Does it exist in the way we choose our leaders? Hold that thought. Because before we answer it, we need to ask something even more important. Why is this happening in the first place? Now, I already know what some people are going to say. This is just poverty. This is unemployment. People are trying to survive. And honestly, they're not entirely wrong. Poverty changes people's behavior. Money matters. I'm a Nigerian too, I completely understand that. But that's not the conversation YC was having. And it's not the conversation I'm having either. The question isn't whether money is important. Of course it is. The real question is, why are we becoming a society that's more interested in entertainment than enlightenment? Why does serious conversation struggle to compete with spectacle? That's what I find fascinating. See, it was Chimamanda Adichie that said, Nigerians are virulently materialistic. I've thought about that quote a lot because every time somebody raises a serious argument in this country, what do? We don't ask whether they are right. We ask how much they have. What's his net worth? What car does he drive? How successful is he? As though truth suddenly changes depending on your account balance. We've reached a point where wealth has become a substitute for credibility. And maybe poverty explains part of that. But poverty doesn't explain all of it. Greed explains some of it too. Status explains some of it. We've become obsessed with shortcuts. Think about the two paths. One path tells you to read, build skills, to develop expertise, to stay disciplined for years before anybody notices you. The other path says be outrageous, go viral, get attention, make money. Which one do you honestly think most people are going to choose? Especially when society rewards the second one faster than the first. That's why I keep saying this isn't really about money. It's about incentives, it's about values, it's about why carelessness has become a paid service in Nigeria. Why has substance become less valuable than spectacle? That's the real conversation. And I think that's what Tosin Rwanda was getting at when he spoke about talent. Not that Nigerians aren't intelligent. Obviously, we are. The human capital is here. The problem is that fewer people are interested in cultivating the habits that produce excellence. Because excellence is expensive. It costs time, it costs discipline, it costs patience. And many people have decided that that price is simply too high. Now, here's where I think it becomes dangerous. Pella isn't the story, he's the evidence. Kata Efe isn't the story, he's the evidence. The real story is what their popularity says about us. Because they didn't force millions of Nigerians to watch them. We chose to. That's important. People always say that leaders are the problem. And to some extent, that's true. But leaders don't fall from the sky. They come from the same society we all live in. If we become a people who no longer value knowledge, why would we suddenly expect a knowledgeable leader should arise? If we reward noise more than competence online, why are we surprised when we reward noise more than competence in politics? The values don't suddenly change because someone enters government. They carry those values with them. This is why I asked earlier whether the Olodos are only on social media. I don't think they are. I think anti-intellectualism is everywhere. You see it when misinformation spreads faster than facts. You see it when confidence beats competence. You see it when people reject experts simply because they don't like what they're hearing. And then something even worse happens. The government fails to reward education. Young people notice this and then they choose to chase entertainment. That success convinces the next generation that education doesn't pay. So even fewer people pursue excellence, and before long, you've created a cycle that feeds itself. That's why I think this conversation is much bigger than influencers. It's about culture. So what do? Well, the obvious place to start is with ourselves. One of the easiest ways to avoid becoming an Olodo is to spend less time entertaining yourself and more time enlightening yourself. And no, this doesn't mean don't watch football. I watch football. It doesn't mean don't laugh at memes. I laugh at memes too. Entertainment isn't the enemy. The problem is when entertainment becomes your entire intellectual diet. If all you consume is content that makes you laugh, eventually you lose the ability to engage with content that makes you think. But this also isn't just an individual problem. If Nigeria wants a different generation, then education has to become valuable again, not just morally, economically. Parents have to reward curiosity, not just wealth. Schools have to teach people how to think, not simply how to pass exams. Government has to create an economy where competence actually pays. Because culture follows incentives. People naturally move towards whatever society rewards. So maybe the real question isn't whether there's an Olodo Uprising. Maybe the real question is, what exactly are we rewarding? Because whatever we reward today is exactly what we'll have more of tomorrow.